Next week, 400 members of the National Assembly will be sworn in. The official opposition will be 5 seats lighter following a poor showing in the election. Statistics show that the Democratic Alliance lost support in townships in Gauteng, following support gained in the 2016 local government election. To help unpack the numbers, I'm joined by Pravesh Deba, who is a statistician for the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. Good evening, Pravesh. Thanks very much for your time. Before we get to the actual numbers, take us through very briefly what you actually did, how you conducted your study, where, and so
on. This is no rocket science in terms of what we did in the post analysis, because the main thing that we do at CSR is the election predictions, and that is done during the voting count, where we predict what the final outcome would be. But once that is completed, then we do have a look at what the final results has been, and then we look at which of the districts and municipalities and so on have done well and which have not done well.
And what did you find in a nutshell?
In a nutshell, it's very similar to the way in which the metros behaved. So if you're looking at KZN as an example, for KZN, the IFP did very well. Whereas we found that ANC, also to a certain degree, the DA and in particular the NFP have lost a number of votes. If we look at Gauteng as an example, then we find that for a number of the suburbs, the DA has lost votes. Whereas we find that EFF and Freedom Front Plus has gained a lot. We also see that in some places ANC has also lost votes in Gauteng as well.
Well, that, of course, I mean, is what everyone was able to glean from the results. But let's then talk about some of the interesting data that came out of your study. And I'm going to pick Alexandra and Deep Sloot here. Now, Alexandra was in the news in the run-up to the election. Two things interest me about from your analysis. One is that the turnout was higher this time around compared to 2014, which then suggests to me that people were actually keen to go to the polls and actually make a statement. You'll tell me if that is also what you think is in fact the case. And secondly, in Alexandra, it is the rivalry between the ANC and the EFF, and not so much. I mean, the DA, of course, but to a much lesser extent, which then probably explains why the people of Alexandra behaved towards the mayor, which is the DA mayor of Johannesburg, the way they did.
You are correct in that when we're looking at the turnout compared to 2014, for Alexandra, we had a higher turnout in 2019. It was just 2% more. For Alexandra, DA lost 1.8%, whereas the ANC and the EFF, as you've mentioned, it gained by 1.4 and 1.3%. Also in Alexandra, the IFP also gained by 1.3%.
Now, if you take then Deep Sloot, for example, right, where again turnout 67% in 2014, 70% in 2019. But if one looks at the numbers of people who have gravitated towards the EFF, which, according to your analysis, suggests that the EFF has a great deal of appeal among the most marginalized urban residents in Gauteng?
For Diepsloot, what has happened is that ANC has gained by 3.4%, whereas, like you say, EFF a little bit unexpectedly has lost by 3.1%. And we also see here again that IP has gained by 0.4%. In Diepsloot also, the DA gained slightly by 0.3%.
Now, I mean, I could go on and go to KwaMashu and other townships, but I want to take you back to statements that were made by all the parties that dared to do some kind of post-election analysis of how they performed. And for the purposes of what I'm going to ask, I'll stick to the ANC, the DA, and the EFF, because those are the parties that actually had some comments to make this week about their respective performances. They believe, the ANC in particular, says that the people continue to have confidence in it, but they have also registered their point that they are not happy with a lot that the ANC does or doesn't do. Do these numbers back the ANC's analysis of its performance?
From what we can see in the numbers, certainly the ANC has lost a lot of votes. So I would agree with what you're saying. But one has to also realize that the turnout has also dropped considerably as well.
Okay, that's where we're going to leave it for tonight. Thanks very much for your time, Pravesh Deba.